The naked chod is a rig I've used loads over the years, and when it comes to just rocking up in a swim, chucking your rods out, showing fish, for me, it doesn't get much better. I do love a hinge, and I've caught a lot of carp using hinges over the years, but there's something about the chod rig, and in particular, the naked chod. I've used them on lead core lots, but I prefer to fish them naked on the line. I do still have a little bit of lead core, and I'll mention that in a minute, but for me, when you're running around a lake and all that you want to do is see your signs of carp and cast a lead at them, you can't beat a naked chod. It presents over pretty much everything. It's very inconspicuous and it's a reliable hooker and catcher of carp, and that is why I use it, and that is why I'm using it here today. For those of you that never use a naked chod rig, I will run through very quickly how to set it up and how I fish it myself. So the idea is very simple. You have a lead at the bottom, then your chod rig runs up and down the line between two stop beads. Now, from the bottom, I have my lead. Above that, I have a heli safe, which the lead attached to, and which enables me to drop the lead when I catch a fish or hook a fish. Above that, I've got 7 inches of lead-free leader, and then sitting on the top of that, I've got a 4mm rubber bead, slightly bored out, so that under pressure, that will slip down onto the leader, and then press up against the heli safe and enables me to ditch that lead. 14 inches above that, I have a no trace bead. You can use a sinker with a bead popped over it, but the no trace beads are really good, and because they've got a slot in them, they slip onto the sleeve nice and easily, but when they have pressure applied to them, they will pop off, and of course that makes the rig very safe. The hook section is able to travel up and over that should you get snapped up. The gap between the two beads, i.e. the 4mm bead at the top of the leader and the no trace bead, is 14 inches. And because I don't fish my chod rigs into thick weed, I'm always fishing for a drop. I have found that those distances, 7 inches and then 14, has been the distances that work best for me. That's how I like to use it, but there's lots of different ways you can do it. Above that, on the line, I have bits of putty moulded very tightly to the line so they don't slip, and I have 3 or 4 of these spaced roughly 8 inches apart, moving up above those beads, which helps to pin the line down. The chod rig is a very simple rig to set up and also to tie, so I'd like to store a few, never loads, but I keep 5, 6 in a little pot in my rucksack. The hooks are whipped on already. It's a simple knotless knot, 7 turns, a little D with a ring on the end. Like I say, these are stored in my tube, and as and when I need them, I take them out of the tube and I tie them to a double ring swivel. And the reason I use a double ring swivel is I like to anchor my chod rigs so that that swivel, rather than standing upright, is actually acting as a very small boom section of about 1 inch. The next thing to do is choose the length of the rig that you want to use. I've caught them on as short as 1 inch or as tall as 4 inches. On this session, I'm using them at 1 inch. So set the length, pinch the material, and then form a 2-turn blood knot. You don't need to do any more than 2 turns. You can do as little as 1. I like to do 2, and because it's a very stiff material, it beds down super tight. Use a puller tool and a nut drill, one on either side. Pull the rig down nice and tight, lube it up a little bit with saliva, bed the knot down, trim the tag, and once you've done that, blob it down with a lighter. You've then got a short chod rig attached to a double ring swivel. Next thing to do is add a piece of putty, only a small amount, and just mould that around the top of the ring at the base of the chod rig. That's the rig pretty much complete, and the next thing to do is take a hook bait. I always plug mine with cork, so I use a drill to core out the bait, plug it with 6mm cork, trim it down with a pair of scissors or bite it off, and then tie dental floss around the bait, which you can then use to attach it to the ring. Once you've bedded the dental floss down nice and tight, pass it through the rig ring, which is on the back of the hook. Do a couple of knots, you can do 2 or 3, it's up to you. Pull them down nice and tight. Once again, trim the tags off, blob it with a lighter, and that is your hook bait attached to the rig. That will not come off. As long as you blob it down properly, that will not come off. Once you've done that, you put a little bit of a curve in the chod rig. If you're using a big tall one, a bit more of a curve. For a shorter one, I don't put as much in. And that is it. Make sure everything's lined up nice and neatly, and make sure the hook is sitting straight. And you're ready to go. The last thing to do then is just check it in the margin to make sure it sinks. I don't have mine sinking super slowly, I don't have them sinking super fast, I like it in between. But they are quite heavily anchored in comparison to how I think most people would fish them. And the chod rig is perfect for a lake like this. Shallow water, so it's hard to feel a drop, and very patchy, so there's silkweed and other types of weed all over the lake, so when you chuck out to a fish, you never really know what you're going to land on, but with a chod rig, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to be fishing effectively.